Hey guys, Andrew Carruthers here from Muscle Evolution. Thrilled to be on the podcast with John, aka the Supplement Advisor. Check it out.
With Hendrik Voss in the front. That was like a defining moment for me, all thanks to your magazine, and kind of led me to where I am today and still pushing on. But bro, can you just tell us a bit more about yourself?
Sure, man. Well, I guess I'm just a regular guy. I was never that great at school. I was never the sort of A+ student or anything like that. When I left school, I decided to get involved with the architecture. I studied architecture at Wits Tech for about 4 years, 5 years, and I went to London shortly after my tertiary education, and from there on, I came back home to South Africa, which was just before I launched Muscle Evolution. Obviously, always been a fan of bodybuilding, and loved training myself. Very passionate about training, and I was a personal trainer for 2 years. And during those 2 years, I saw a gap in the market for a local magazine that obviously promoted local sport, local bodybuilding. I was always a fan of magazines. When I was in high school, I used to go and take extra maths in Randburg, and what I used to do is in my spare time, if I got dropped off there early or I got fetched late, I used to go buy these flex magazines and muscular development magazines and muscle and fitness. We used to buy them by the kilogram back in those days, and even though I was probably about 63, 64 kilograms at the time, I used to buy these magazines. I used to read through all the articles and check out all the greats, like Kevin and Dorian and Sean. And that was my sort of entry into my passion for bodybuilding.
Cool, man. And then what was the other deciding factor for you to actually start up Muscular ME?
Well, basically what I was doing was, as I said, I was personal training, and within the space of a day, as a personal trainer, you're very busy in the mornings. You are sometimes busy at lunchtime, and then obviously you get crazy busy when everyone's finished work again in the afternoons. So what I used to do is I used to work with Arnold Goos at the Body Conscious private studio at Rampart Ridge Mall, or Randridge Mall. And in between the clients that I used to train, I was constantly reading magazines and obviously trying to educate myself more on nutrition, educate myself more on training. And then one of my clients was actually my girlfriend, who became my wife at the time, Tanya, and she was a graphic designer. And she said to me the one day, you know what, I've always wanted to try and put together a magazine. Do you think we should put a magazine together? I said, well, I've got a great idea, and I'd love to start up a bodybuilding and fitness magazine that is obviously related to the South African industry and start promoting local sport. So I put all the content together, I sold the advertising, and she helped me put the magazine together, and that's how basically we came about it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. When was your first book? What year was it released?
It was September, October 2003. And that was the first magazine that we actually managed to get together. Look, we tried putting it together for a good 2-3 months, pulling all the content together, trying to sell a couple of ads so that we could obviously cover the cost of the print bill, because that was the biggest thing when I printed magazines. It was all about covering the cost of the print bill and obviously hopefully making a bit of money on top of that. And it took a good 2 years before we saw a profit. A lot of people think you just start businesses and you're on your way from the get-go, but it's not the case. The first 2 years were very, very difficult. I mean, I only published Muscle Evolution for a total of 15 years, but during the first 2 years, I could say that probably broke even more than we made money. But it was a matter of really just sticking to it. My passion for what I was doing really made me stick to it. I didn't give up in that regard. And look, after 2 years, people in the industry and supplement companies started to see that we weren't going away and we were sticking around, and we were obviously getting much better by that stage. So it took a good 2 years before we actually started turning a profit, and I could really, call it a business and actually turn it into a decent business.
100%, man. And what was your favorite issues? Did you have one that really stood out over all the years?
Look, I used to enjoy how much people used to like seeing the show coverage of themselves in the magazines, and I really used to try my hardest to get all the shows happening throughout the year inside the magazine. Obviously, there were so many shows happening that I couldn't just fill a magazine full of show coverage. I had to give some decent editorial as well so that people could educate themselves. But if I had to say, if I have a best issue, I don't really have a best issue. I'm obviously very proud of the last one. I mean, the last one for me was very emotional to put together, obviously, because I knew it was going to be the last one. And but I mean, we put heart and soul into every single title that we published. Obviously, Muscle Evolution became Fitness Magazine, and then Fitness Magazine became a whole host of other magazines. You know, I've published probably over 400 or 500 magazines over the space of 15 years. But from a Muscle Evolution point of view, look, I mean, we put heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears into every single issue to make sure that, you know, we were creating content that the South African bodybuilding and fitness public would enjoy reading. And yeah, look, it was quite sad when it all ended, but obviously, you know, things are as they are. The world is now digital, and we move forward.
Yeah, 100%, man. And what I mean, one of the things I noticed were you were actually one of the first, like, you know, magazines, or obviously in South Africa, but they will actually go through like anabolics. I think with Anthony Roberts, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm very close with Anthony. You know, I've known him for a good 15 years now, and I really wanted someone that could write articles and give us some really good information that would be sort of well respected from an editorial point of view. You know, I didn't just want to get a couple of local guys that may have known a few things about steroids. I wanted to make sure that we were really at the cutting edge of the editorial content when it came to providing information out to people that were reading the magazine.
Yeah, 100%, man. And what kind of opportunities did Emmy like provide with you? Obviously, you met, like, you know, the top quality international bodybuilders and everything like that.
Yeah, we had some fantastic times. A few friends of mine, obviously, who were just as passionate about bodybuilding. First of all, Tommy Fraser and Chris in Durban. They equally took it upon themselves to bring out quite a few guys to obviously come and visit us here in South Africa and give seminars. I mean, I've traveled the country with the likes of Ronnie Coleman. We did the Ronnie Coleman tour, which was phenomenal. I got to spend day in and day out with them, eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, talking, training. That was a phenomenal experience, you know. And Sean Ray, Dexter Jackson, Tamia Majarova, Adele, and who else did that? Yeah, Troy also came through with the Sean Ray camp. I mean, we got to spend quite a bit of time taking them to game farms and doing muscle camps and things like that. So it was really a great time for me to get to meet some of these guys who I've only ever seen in magazines and who I've really looked up to.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, I think without Emmy, I don't think our industry would be as good as it is today, you know, because you really set up the platform like so perfectly because no one else was doing it. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing, man.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I mean, do you have any like past regrets, like looking at everything now?
Regrets? No, you know, I'm a firm believer in. Look, I didn't know anything about publishing. I was barely any good at writing. I mean, I was pretty decent at writing at school. So everything I learned along the way, I learned through mistakes, and I think that's what a lot of people are not really prepared to do. Is, you know, if you're not prepared to make mistakes, then you're not prepared to grow. I made a lot of mistakes throughout the years. You know, things I could have handled better, things I could have done better, but I mean, at the end of the day, without those lessons, how do you actually become better at what you're doing? You know, so I think regret is a strong word. If I would have changed a few things, what would I have changed? I would have liked to have been able to publish more athletes. I mean, you know, as much as I tried to portray that we were all about the athletes and trying to get as many people in the magazine as possible, when you're only publishing 6 magazines a year, it's incredibly difficult to capture the entire spectrum of athletes that are in the country. So it was, I would have liked to have been able to definitely publish more athletes, but I don't think from a paper point of view and just from a size of magazine point of view, it just wasn't possible, but I did my best.
Yeah, 100%, man. And were there any athletes that really stood out to you, like in South Africa, like you during all the years, like ones that you really thought could have made it and, kind of didn't or did?
Yeah, look, I think that there are so many athletes that really, really stood out. The guys that really took hold of the big trophies at the competitions. I mean, I come way back from an era where Andre van der Mesch was completely dominating the circuit at one stage. Shameen Adams, obviously, he's still involved in the industry, not so much competing anymore. But there's been some phenomenal talent that's come up through the years. And obviously, I've worked with a lot of guys more consistently, like Mario Stone, Chris Fitzpatrick, Andrew Hudson, guys that I've known since kids that are now, great guys and they're adults and they're still, hacking at it from a bodybuilding perspective and still going for it. Look, I think there's a couple of guys that are extremely talented at the moment. I'd like to see them get their break and really sort of break into the international circuits. Some of the guys like Mornay van den Berg, what's the one that's causing all the shit at the moment? What's his name?
Shit, man. I think it's Albert, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Albert's causing a lot of shit lately, but you know what? He's a phenomenal athlete. He's got massive potential, and I really want to see these guys, breaking into some of these larger competitions and really taking home the sort of credibility and respect that they deserve. I think the one thing that I've come to realize mainly is that even though the guys are as good as they are, they've been training their whole lives to get to the point that they're at now. And now is the time in which they really need to sort of, take the talent they've got and take the energy they've got into training even harder and prepping even harder. Even the likes of Sabu. I mean, Sabu is now obviously an IFBB Pro League pro, but he's really only just getting started from a point of view that now's the time. He's got the size, he's got the proportions, he's got everything, but now he really needs to dial in, and really take that physique to the next level if he wants to make an impact on the international stage. So I think we've got so much talent, but the guys realize, even if they've been training 10, 15, 20 years, some of the guys are only just starting their professional careers now. And I think it's really important for them to see that, everything they've done before now is merely just a preliminary build up to where they are now. And if they really want to take their careers further and possibly step on the Olympia stage or whatever stage it is that they want to step onto, be it the New York Pros or the Arnolds, they really have to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Mario Stone and really push to that next level to get on those stages and make an impact. Otherwise, they're just going to get called out and get sent off stage. As much as we want to see them flourish and we want to see them do well in their careers, I mean, it's really going to take a couple of steps further to make an impact on the international stage.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, I agree completely. Do you think social media has made a good or bad influence on like local athletes?
I think social media is a bit of a dog show at the moment. I'll be honest. I think if I look at all the content that people are putting out there, for me, it's a bit like watching those old TV screens in the 80s or the 90s where there's no signal and there's just this white noise pattern happening in the back. And I don't mean to be, I don't mean to talk down on it when I say that, but I just think that a lot of guys are not really focused on creating content that is worthwhile to the audience. I mean, it's great to see what happens to a guy in and out of his day, whether he's eating or whether he's training. I mean, all that kind of stuff is really cool. It keeps people in real time as to what's going on, whereas back in the day with magazines, you only got to see what someone was doing, say, 2 months ago. But now, obviously, living in a time of social media, you get to see what's happening real time. I think that a lot of the guys could work on how they display themselves to the general public a little bit better. I don't enjoy all the animosity that's out there at the moment. I don't enjoy all the rivalry. I think it's completely unnecessary. One of my favorite times was probably just as social media was picking up, but I think bodybuilding used to be, how can I say, a lot friendlier. It used to be a lot a lot better to go to the shows. People used to want to go to the shows. You know, these days there's quite a bit of animosity that's been generated through social media. So it doesn't quite have that camaraderie that I would like it to have. But I suppose that's just the sign of the times. You know, people have been given a microphone now, which is called social media, and people say whatever's on their mind. And you know, it's risky. You know, to a certain point, it's good that people get to, you know, speak their minds and say whatever they want. But I just don't really like and enjoy the animosity that happens between the different training camps and between the coaches and between other people that just have certain things to say about other people. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think it's relevant, and I don't think it does anything to uplift the overall camaraderie of the sport.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think people are so fixated about what they see on social media that they kind of forget that they have their own lives to live, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I mean, who's your favorite athlete, or like of all time that like kind of motivated you from the get-go?
Look, I've always been, if we're talking internationally, I've always been a huge Kevin Levrone fan. Not that he ever had, I'd say, the best physique, but my passion was for bodybuilding was first originated, as I said, back in the day when it was Dorian, it was Sean Ray, it was Kevin Levrone, Lee Priest, Paul Dillett. You know, these are the guys who really stood out for me, and I really enjoyed that look of the physique. But obviously times have changed. You know, you've got Phil now, you've got Sean Roden, Brandon Curry, obviously coming up, taking the recent Olympia win. And the look is completely different, you know, and I'm all for the evolution of the physiques, and I'm all for the evolution of the sport. But what really primed me and my passion in bodybuilding from the get-go was definitely the likes of Kevin Levrone. I'm a huge Kevin Levrone fan.
Yeah, 100%, man. And are you a fan of all the new classes out now?
You mean all the new divisions? I think that it is good in many ways. Look, I'll always be a bodybuilder at heart, and I'll always be a hardcore training bodybuilder at heart. And so my passion still lies in the old school bodybuilding times where, you know, guys are completely shredded to the bone, and obviously you get to see, you know, the physique in its entirety. I'm not ripping the other physique lineups, but I think it caters for a wider audience. It allows a wider number of athletes to now participate at shows, because a lot of guys that have been training for many years have never really been able to have a platform to step onto stage. Maybe they weren't big enough, maybe they weren't hard enough, or maybe they just didn't want to take their bodies to the limits that the bodybuilders take their bodies to these days. So I think having the different lineups is great because it creates a much bigger platform for everybody to participate on. I mean, who knows? Maybe a guy who's doing physique or you know, muscle model or whatever wants to step up and become a bodybuilder later. But these platforms allow him to start early instead of having to wait a couple of years until he gets the size, gets the condition, and then suddenly launches himself onto the more hardcore platform, which is bodybuilding, you know. So I am a fan of the different divisions. But obviously my core passion stays with the
100%. And have you ever competed during all the years?
Yeah, I competed in 2005. I did 2 shows. I did the IFBB National Novice, and I did the IFBB Provincial Novice, which I won both shows. So I only ever did 2 shows back in 2005.
And was there a reason why you never kind of pursued it further to compete, or was it just like, you know?
Look, I'll be honest. I've even thought about competing again, you know, lately. But back then, I was putting so much work into creating the magazines, and the magazines were really at a stage where they needed to have maximum input to really take off. And look, I mean, being a novice, obviously, I put myself through some really stringent dieting, and for the past, or I'd say the 2 weeks before the show, it was completely useless. I mean, I think I lay on the couch and just ate or trained, and that's all I could do. I couldn't work. And it did scare me a little bit, I'll be honest, because I was unable to sort of get up and sit behind the computer and make calls and make contact to clients. And my entrepreneurial spirit is way higher than my will to compete. Let's put it that way. And I've always been very interested in business and obviously being an entrepreneur and coming up with new ideas. And as much as I did enjoy the competing factor, I just felt that it had a massively negative impact on me from a productivity point of view. And so I chose rather to, promote the sport from a media point of view. And obviously, I still train every day when we're obviously not in lockdown. And I'm still as hungry for training as I've ever been. But we'll see. I mean, I might compete again, I might not. But my priority has always been business and making money and doing what I do to the full extent, so that I can make sure that one day when I'm done with the work I do, I can be proud of it. And I don't think being a competitive athlete really allows you that sort of strength and persistence to be able to put into your work what you do need to obviously succeed. There's a couple of guys who I saw year in and year out, your Mario Van Bolion and your Chris Fitzpatrick and a couple of other guys that were running serious companies. I mean, they were running SSN, they were running SPS, Muscle Junkie, all those businesses. And no matter how hard they were dieting and how hard they were training, they were still managing to keep these businesses together and still run them on a daily basis. I mean, I take my hat off to them. I don't think I'm one of them. But it must have been a very grumpy situation for them when they were competing, because having to run businesses like that and still obviously maintain diet and get into shape must have been hell of a tough thing on their bodies.
Yeah, 100%, man. And okay, so you're talking about other things that you're doing now. What is that? Because I see that your Muscle Evolution website is still going, and there are issues you can actually view, which is really awesome.
Yeah, look, what I'm doing at the moment is after September, I've got the magazine here, after the September-October issue of 2018, and that last day that I walked out of the Muscle Evolution office, I'll be honest with you, I never thought that I would be involved in bodybuilding and fitness again, or maybe that was just my way of, wanting to do something else and sort of putting it out of my mind. I was a bit drained, I was tired, and I really needed to take a break from it and do something else. Plus, I think, like when you've nurtured something for 15 years and you grew it like I grew it, it was quite sad to leave it at the end of the day. And I didn't want to just do something half-heartedly. I've always wanted to be a part of big things. I've always wanted to be a part of things that make big impact, And so I guess I took a bit of a sabbatical, if you want to call it, since 2018. So for the past 2 years, I've been doing a whole load of other stuff, which was obviously non-bodybuilding related. And then recently, when I got back from England, I decided, you know what, I really want to get back into bodybuilding and fitness again. So I relaunched the website recently, muscleevolution.co.za. And I'm basically treating the online website like a magazine. I'm still we're doing the babe features, we're doing the drug articles, I'm doing food articles, supplement articles. We're about to go into video. We're obviously going to do long, lengthy interviews with athletes, etc., etc. So basically, I'm treating the website like a magazine. I'm kind of enjoying it. Look, one of the main reasons why I actually got into print in the beginning was I just enjoyed the experience of holding a magazine, reading a magazine, and sort of the smell of that paper and the smell of that ink, And obviously, I don't have that anymore. So we're doing what we're doing on a digital platform, and hopefully it's going to have the same impact in the near
100%,
future.
man. I'm 100% sure that is going to be happening, man, because the content you guys provide is absolutely incredible, man. So will there ever be any older issues on there?
Yeah, look, I think I've got about 75 magazines up there at the moment. I've got a bit of a mix and match with, I've got some fitness his editions up there as well, in case there's a couple of fitness guys that want to read those mags. From a Muscle Evolution point of view, I am limited on what I've got in a digital capacity at the moment. I do have all the files. It'll just take a little bit of work to actually put them all together and create an actual digital magazine especially of the earlier editions. So I'm going to be seeing what I can do in that respect, because a lot of people are asking us to put up some of the earlier.
Yeah, 100%, man. Because I mean, those old editions were like really like amazing back then. But like when no one else was even thinking about like bodybuilding magazines, you guys are already out there. And I mean, I have seen like muscular development and everything else just kind of fade away slowly and gradually. The sizes have like dwindled down to nothing, and even the Flicks magazine, you can hardly find like a good Flicks magazine anymore.
Yeah, look, I think I think it's not that people don't want to put together magazines anymore. I mean, we were running with digital magazines long before we decided to cancel the print edition. I mean, we were still putting them up on Zinio and on Magster, and the way in which people are absorbing content these days is obviously everything's online, and people are doing it in sort of a piecemeal format. They're going online and they're sort of, absorbing a little bit of content, and then they're sort of closing the phone, going off, and then they're coming back later. So it doesn't really make sense to have an actual digital format of a magazine. So that's why with the website now, what I'm doing is I'm putting up, bite-sized bits of information and long articles. So if guys want to read short pieces or they want to read long pieces, I mean, it's all there. And they don't have to worry about, putting it in their bookshelf a bit later. They can always just go back to the website and revisit whatever it is that they want to read. But I think it's very important that we evolve from in a publishing point of view. It's very important that we evolve to the way that people are absorbing content. And with that being done on all the platforms, obviously the website has all the information, but putting up bite-sized pieces of information on social, on Facebook, on Instagram, etc. I think that's the way that people are consuming information at the moment, because there's just so much information happening and people are being bombarded with so much stuff in a day's time that if you start bombarding people with too many long pieces of information, they just get bored and they switch off. So it's quite important that you adapt to the times and you evolve with the times, and you feed people information that they need on the same basis that they
yeah, 100%, man. I think people's attention spans nowadays are a lot shorter, so they just want something quick to read and kind of to browse. But yeah, man, I really love what you're doing on your website. I think it's fantastic. I think I mean, I wasn't actually aware of it until I actually went on your Instagram and I clicked on that on your website, and then I was very impressed, man. Seeing all those well, not all the editions, but all some of the editions of Muscular Evolution were really great, man.
Thank you very much.
So I mean, is there any chance in the future that you might compile a kind of a little magazine, on your website? Maybe off shows or anything?
I think, look, it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort, and I'm not shy of either of those. I just would like to. I think it would be a good idea to get some feedback from the viewers or the people who are actively using the website and actually find out what they want. I think the way that the website is displaying information at the moment, it still obviously gives out the education and the information that people want. But at the same token, if people want us to do a digital magazine in the future, I'll definitely look at that.
Yeah, 100%, man. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some supplements now. I mean, I know you used to do those reviews for some of the USM product. I remember that quite well because I was always interested in supplements, and seeing your reviews obviously compelled my curiosity. So, what were your favorite supplements throughout the years, pre-workouts?
Sure. That's digging into the historic files there. When I first started training, believe it or not, there was a product by USN called Muscle Fuel Mass. I don't know if you remember Muscle Fuel Mass. And they had, or Muscle Fuels, used to come in those big, I think it was the 5 kilo buckets or the 10 kilo buckets, I think it was. And we all used to get stuck into that. I mean, that's basically where my experience in supplements started. Or I'll even take it further back than that. We used to, when I first started training, over 25 years ago, it was the Joe Wider powders, which you pulled out of the tin, and you mix the stuff in milk or water, and it was like mixing baking dough into milk, and it never went down properly. And it was just a crazy time of trying to consume more protein in a supplement form. And it was a great product and it did the job at the time. But how things have evolved, I mean, as I say, then my supplement journey went on to Muscle Fuel Mass. It was a good mass building product. Obviously back then we just wanted to get as big as possible. We didn't really care about abs and all that kind of shit that everyone else worries about today. We just wanted to get as big as possible and as strong as possible. So it was Muscle Fuel Mass, and then obviously I don't think they obviously make that anymore. Then it started to become your whey proteins, your whey isolates, One of my favorite products back in the day was
Oh,
the
yes,
SPS,
yes.
the Stratum Professional Series that Mario and Chris brought together with Gary Stratum. They had an orange flavor ISO Pro. It was very watery and runny, but it was absolutely fantastic. It tasted great. And at the time, we thought we were getting the best, quality protein in. I think things have changed a lot. I think the supplement guys are really coming up with some really innovative stuff at the moment. Pre-workouts, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of pre-workouts from the point of view that I can't use them. I think they work fantastically. I think they give you crazy pumps and mental stimulus, but I'm quite caffeine sensitive. So if I normally train sometimes in the afternoon. So if I have a pre-workout in the afternoon, I don't sleep that night. So I've had to unfortunately let go of taking pre-workouts. I am a big fan of BCAAs and EAAs. I do believe that they are hugely important, obviously, before training. Also a big fan of carbs during training and after training. Obviously, when you're trying to gain that little bit of extra size, I think the carbs really give you a good pump, and they really help you, put on some good size. What else can I tell you? Supplement wise, creatine. Let's talk about creatine. I mean, in my mind, I was the kid who was mixing the monohydrate with the grape juice, the liquid fruit, in his mother's kitchen, and that stuff worked like a charm. I still believe in the old school creatines over the newer creatines, I'll be honest. But look, there's a lot of technology out there at the moment. There's a lot of scientific research and stuff that's being done on different supplements, and I really think we're at a stage where we're at the pinnacle of what we can be producing. Obviously, from a price bracket point of view as well. I'm sure that these guys out there that are manufacturing supplements could be manufacturing much better quality supplements. They could be delivering much higher quality protein supplements, but it just wouldn't be financially or viable to the consumers. I think the prices would go through the roof if we really had to push the limits of what we could do with supplements.
Yeah, 100%, man. Did you think the local companies are catching up to the international companies, or are they at the same point?
I think that there are a lot of, how can I say, demands from consumers here, or trends that are happening here in South Africa that a lot of other countries don't participate in. I think that the quality of proteins is probably definitely on par with respect to your whey blends, etc., etc. I don't think it can get much better. I mean, we can produce a product that is just as good as any international product. I just see that the trends are different. Like we have a nation that consume a lot of mass builders, and some of those mass builders have soy protein in to try and obviously bring the price down, etc. These are things that you won't find internationally. You won't find mass gainers that have soy protein loaded in their products. I just don't think that the Europeans and that are buying into the whole soy protein blends. And
100%, man. I mean, like I have to say, like one of the things that really compelled me with sports supplementation back then was obviously the advertising. I mean, you had Muscle Tech had Jay Cutler, they had Dexter Jackson, Johnny Jackson, they had everyone, man, and that like really, I think, forced people out of the element to go out and buy these products because of how good the advertising was, even though it was a bit mimicky and stuff like that. But I mean, man, the adverts back then were just absolutely amazing.
100%. Look, it was a different time. You didn't have ambassadors that are digitally fluent with all the social media platforms that we are today, and people relied very heavily on print media. I mean, if you took the current Mr. Olympia and you put him on a page in a magazine and you put a tub next to it and you said, this is what this guy eats, I mean, that was it. Like the next week after that magazine launched, the shops would be flooded with people buying that specific product. But times have changed. Obviously, ambassadors are out there now, and although I seem to think it's a little bit flooded from a marketing point of view, and it's getting a little bit, how can I say, tedious, with everyone just kind of pushing brands and pushing products, and this is the best and that's the best. And then the next day, they have a fight with that supplement owner, and then they're onto some other brand, and then they find themselves promoting a new product. I mean, it's very, very dangerous for the individual as an athlete to actually sort of retain some kind of believable status within the industry if he's constantly jumping backwards and forwards to different brands.
Yeah, 100%, I agree. But I also think it's a part of the consumer as well that has to educate themselves. And consumers nowadays just, look at something and they just believe it without really doing their research.
Yeah, I think we went through a stage with the consumer where they were just sort of eating up anything that got put in front of them from a digital perspective, be it Facebook, Instagram, whatever it was. But I definitely think that consumers are starting to smarten up and become a little bit more conscious and aware of either trends that are happening in the sports nutrition industry or just people that have maybe jumped too many brands over the years. So I think it's really important, like you say, for people to become a little bit more conscious in what's actually going on, and just maybe make their own decisions at the end of the day. I mean, look, if you want to go out there and try a supplement, there's only one way you'll know whether or not you enjoy that supplement or whether it works for you, and that's to try it. I think everyone's looking for that golden tub of protein or that golden tub of pre-workout that's going to change their life. And I just think that we all respond differently to different things. So it's more a matter of trial and error than anything else. And obviously flavors as well. I mean, you can only ask your buddy, what's this vanilla like? And he says, it's the best vanilla I've ever tasted. I mean, you might think it's the most grim vanilla you've ever tasted. It's just something that people have to go through a whole series of trial and error just to find out what works.
Yeah, 100%, man. I also have a question. Yeah, with all your years of training, like what keeps you like hungry and so on course and motivated?
With respect to like
training and everything, just to be hungry and
Look, I mean, the truth is, I've been training for 25 years. I have times where I don't want to train. I have no motivation to train, depending on how much either work I'm doing or if I get preoccupied with a business or whatever else I'm doing. Obviously, my training, unfortunately, might tend to take a back seat. But training for me has become, and I won't use the word lifestyle, I will say it's become sort of a necessity in that, the stress relief and just the general, getting the endorphins going after a workout and really sort of resetting my mind after a full day's work. Training for me is more of a therapeutic thing these days than it is an actual, how can I say, physical thing. I'm not training to be in shape at the moment. I obviously want to be as strong as I possibly can, and I really enjoy training as well. So I guess, one of the main keys to becoming a successful bodybuilder is something that I've seen in some of the pros that I've had the honor of spending time with. I mean, you look at a guy like Ronnie Coleman, and with all the time I've spent with Ronnie, he'll just tell you he loves training. And we would train twice a day. And then you hear the likes of someone like, apparently Sean Ray doesn't like training. And he only trained because obviously it was his job and it was his business and he had to train. So I think that the ones that really succeed and the ones that make it to the top are the ones that really enjoy training. If you don't enjoy training, then I don't know how you can be a successful dentist if you don't enjoy working on people from a dental point of view. If it's just your job at the end of the day, then I think you'll never really make it to the top pinnacle of the sport or the career that you're involved in, simply because you're not really that hungry for it. I think, being hungry for training is something that you work on deep inside yourself, and it's something that you've really got to want. Like most things in life, I think that the people who are the most successful at things are the ones that enjoy what they do.
100%, man. I agree completely, man. And I see that you also have like almost like a podcast, right?
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel called the Maverick Talk Show, which I'm relaunching pretty soon. It's got 4 interviews on it at the moment, and I'm going to be relaunching that pretty soon, interviewing a lot of people in the industry and obviously people out of the industry as well. I'm very inspired by the likes of the Joe Rogan show on YouTube, and I really enjoy watching the Joe Rogan podcasts and obviously his video shows. So that's something that I'm also working on. I'd like to bring that sort of, that brutal honesty, pure open conversation back to my channel. And yeah, that's definitely something I'll be
Yeah,
working
cool,
on
man.
in the near
So yeah,
future.
what I'll do is I'll definitely put the links down below so people can follow and follow if they're not following you on Instagram and whatnot. But yeah, man, it was such a pleasure, bro. I mean, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure all the listeners out there have learned plenty as well, man. So thank you, bro. I mean, is there any last words?
Any last words, hey? Be nicer to each other. That's what I'd like to say. I just think that there's so much shit going on in this industry at the moment. I think people could be a lot nicer to each other. I think that people could push each other on a little bit more. I'd like to see a little bit more camaraderie, within the industry. From a work point of view, look, I don't think things are going to get any easier for any of us in the near future. It's just, but always do what you're passionate in doing. I mean, if you want to make a complete success out of something, you've got to enjoy it. Even when the hurdles show themselves up, just lift those legs over those hurdles and push through whatever it is you're going through. But don't give up. I think a lot of people give up too easily. It took me 2 years to make a cent on Muscle Evolution. That's 12 magazines and probably R1.5 million spent before I even turned a cent. So nothing these days is easy to achieve as an overnight success. There's the saying, an overnight success is about 10,000 hours and about 2 years of business. So you just got to keep pushing on. But the main thing is you got to enjoy what you do. You've got to want to wake up every day and do what it is that you do, and you'll see eventually. If you're onto something good and you work hard at it and you're good to other people, you'll
Yeah,
make a
100%.
success of it.
Well, Andrew, just thank you so much, bro, for your time, and it's been real inspirational. But thank you again. I do appreciate it, man. And yeah, bro, you've been
That's
the one there, bro.